Our conversation with the latest immigration Trump headlines. I don't have my IFB in, so if somebody was talking to me. But joining us now at the table are former U.S. attorney and co-host of Sisters-in-Law podcast and MSNBC legal analyst Joyce Vance and MSNBC legal correspondent and host of MSNBC's Can They Do That, Lisa Rubin. Okay, please help me understand.
Can they do that?
Can they do that?
Yeah.
So this is what's going on. Judge Hannah Dugan in Milwaukee, a judge in Milwaukee, she was arrested. The FBI arrested her. And this is what the Attorney General's statement, the attorney's statement on behalf of Judge Dugan says. Attorney General Dugan's statement says this, the judge's statement. Judge Hannah Dugan has committed herself to the rule of law and the principles of due process for her entire career as a lawyer and a judge. Judge Dugan will defend herself vigorously and looks forward to being exonerated. The White House, the Department of Justice, they are saying that this judge was illegal.
Yeah.
That she committed a crime, a felony is what they're saying.
That she aided the escape of this individual that they were there to apprehend, that she took them through a back door away from the DEA agents. So that's the nub of this thing at this moment.
But the affidavit says.
But the affidavit.
That criminal affidavit that the department has to put forward themselves as their explanation of why they're bringing these criminal, quote-unquote, felony charges underscores and notes that the man in question was in a public hallway, that DEA agents and ADA agent saw the man in a public hallway after the judge allegedly ushered him out of this secret door. He was in the hallway with his attorney. They observed him. They rode an elevator with this gentleman. And then, only after riding the elevator and the man is outside of the courthouse, do they attempt to arrest him. Help me understand why the judge was arrested and why the Department of Justice is saying these things on national television that fly in the face of the reality of what they put in their own affidavit.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much wrong here that it's very difficult to know where to start. First off, this notion of the arrest in the courthouse, you know, the fact that they held back, that they didn't arrest him once he was out of her courtroom, they make a lot about the fact that she ushers him out this secret door. It's not a secret door. It goes back into the public part of the courthouse where they see him. They could have arrested him. The fact that they didn't suggests that maybe they had some concerns, that they knew it would be better to be out on the streets. Federal law enforcement typically doesn't make arrests in this setting in state courthouses because it really tamps down on the ability of law enforcement to protect communities. Witnesses won't come forward. People won't go to court if they fear this sort of thing. So that's sort of one big bucket of issues. But to the point that you're making about whether or not we can credit what's in this affidavit, I would say it's a pretty slick, glossy version of what happened. You know, they obtained the warrant on Thursday. They seal it. They arrest the judge in her courthouse. They don't go to her home. They wait and arrest her at work, clearly an effort to intimidate judges across the country, right, trying to force compliance. But they don't go to a grand jury. This is just a warrant signed by a magistrate judge. And it makes you wonder if they didn't believe a grand jury would have returned an indictment on these facts, right? The charges are pretty slim. There are some technical legal issues that I'm sure we'll be discussing over the next few days about how they will pan out. But the reality is, this is politics.
They took in a judge without having gone through a grand jury. That's the point.
And let me tell you one more thing that makes this so appalling. This is not a case where you make an arrest. You go to the grand jury, you get an indictment, she shows up, right? If it's a legitimate case, by doing this in her courthouse, in front of her colleagues, in her community, I think they wanted to intimidate folks.
Thank you. Thank you. That's where there it is, all right there.
Yeah.
This is the administration basically telling the judges who have been ruling against this administration for the last month, you're next.
You bet.
We don't like what you're doing. We're going to take this little state judge, right, in this little know-nothing case. No, they don't give a damn about this guy that they went after. He's not the target. He's not the target.
No,
the target is the judge.
He's a good foil, and that's because of the crime that he's accused of turns our conversation away from Xiomara Abrego Garcia or some of the people who have been sent to El Salvador where they are languishing in a notorious prison. And instead, we're talking about the judge who allowed a man who has already been deported once and is now being accused of domestic violence crimes. That's who we're talking about now. The judge who allegedly opened the door and let the guy who's been accused of domestic battery escape. They know that this allows them to flip the narrative in a way that they feel is advantageous for them. And that's why they're talking about it on TV in a way that the Department of Justice doesn't usually talk about their cases, that other agencies don't talk about cases. Why? Because it's prejudicial to a defendant or an immigrant to have the full force of the government on television staring down, the camera and saying this person obstructed justice. To have an attorney general say that about a sitting judge is a complete reversal of how we are used to federal law enforcement operating in this country.
It goes beyond that. Can we play the sound of Pam Bondi on Fox News?
They're deranged is all I can think of. I cannot believe. I think some of these judges think they are beyond and above the law, and they are not. And we're sending a very strong message today. If you are harboring a fugitive, we don't care who you are. If you are helping hide one, if you are giving a TDA member guns, anyone who is illegally in this country, we will come after you and we will prosecute you.
From the criminal complaint against Dugan, officers and Flores Ruiz, the man in question, were in the same hallway. After leaving the judge's vestibule and returning to the public hallway, DEA Agent A reported that Flores Ruiz and his attorney were in the public hallway. DEA Agent B also observed Flores Ruiz and his attorney in the hallway near courtroom 615 and noted that Flores Ruiz was looking around the hallway. But Pam Bondi said if you are helping hide one, harboring a fugitive, those are not things that actually happen. What is going on?
And can I just, before you could dovetail on that, let's just go also from the criminal complaint against Dugan, where you have regarding a judicial warrant versus an administrative warrant. And this is important. Judge Dugan asked if deportation officer A had a judicial warrant, and a deportation officer A responded, no, I have an administrative warrant. Judge Dugan stated that the deportation officer A needed a judicial warrant. Deportation officer A told Judge Dugan that deportation officer A was in a public space, to Simone's point, and had a valid immigration warrant. So help us understand what these two pieces out of their own complaint says relative to what Simone's put on the table. Is like, y'all seem to be caught in a lie here, because you're saying one thing, Pam Bondi, on national television, to your point, putting a nice final fancy gloss on it, but your own document that you put in the court system says something different, your own complaint.
Yeah, I mean, this is the whole mess that we're talking about, right? This clip that we see of Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, posted on Twitter, this is all in violation of very clear DOJ policy. You're not permitted in a case of an indictment or a complaint to go to the press and talk about anything that's not in the four corners of the document, because it prejudices the defendant's rights. We will probably see a motion to dismiss this case outright. If this was a normal Justice Department, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, anybody else who was talking about this case on national TV would be referred to the Office of Professional Responsibility for disciplinary action. This is not a functional Justice Department, so the dirty laundry will come out in the wash in these proceedings, where the facts just don't add up, right? Was he in a public space? Wasn't he? They didn't have a judicial warrant. That matters because it means there wasn't a finding of probable cause made by a judicial officer to authorize the arrest of this gentleman who was in the judge's courtroom. Now, look, is he a savory guy? It sounds like there were issues. He was there on domestic violence charges. I mean, no one is holding up his conduct as the kind of conduct that we think is laudatory. But the point is, we live in a rule of law system where everybody is entitled to due process. And what we are learning is that if people don't get due process, none of us are safe, right? If we don't have the ability to go in front of a judge and say, I'm an American citizen, or I wasn't the person that you think I was in this case, then we have lost our most fundamental rights, and Americans are waking up to that.
It all comes back to two words. No matter what the narrative is, due process. it is the core of what